Okay, so welcome to my oral presentation. My name is Lena Chavez, and I'm going to do the representation of gender roles in Mexican romantic comedies. The two films I'm going to use is Treintona, Soltera y Fantástica, representing women, as well as No Manches Frida, representing men. So, introduction. I'm comparing the representation of women in Treintona, Soltera y Fantástica with the representation of men in No Manches Frida. Both films are romantic comedies, but they explore gender in different ways. My argument is that they criticize traditional gender roles instead of celebrating them. Through Ines and Zeki, both films that show personal growth comes from independence, responsibility, and mutual respect. Alright, so the women in Treintona, Soltera y Fantástica. At the beginning of the film, Ines's fiance calls off their wedding, leaving her heartbroken. But instead of letting the breakup define her, she begins writing about her experiences, and her blogs become much more popular throughout the movie. Her family constantly asks when she is going to get married and have children, showing that pressure placed on women. Marujano Salazar argues that the film challenges these traditional expectations by allowing Ines to find happiness through her career and personal growth instead of marriage. Some important scenes. One important scene is when Ines attends family gatherings where relatives keep reminding her that she's getting older and she should settle down. Another is when her writing starts attracting more readers because people relate to her experience as a single woman. At the end of the film, Oscar tries to win her back, but Ines chooses to focus on herself and future instead of immediately entering another relationship. This ending shows that she values her independence. And then looking into the film Men in No Manches Frida, Zeki is introduced as a criminal who only returns to the school to recover the money he hid before going to prison. To avoid getting caught, he pretends to be a teacher. At first, he is immature, believes confidence, and trying to solve every problem. But Lucy, however, is organized, educated, and takes teaching seriously. Paul Julian Smith argues that the film reflects unequal expectations for men and women while using comedy to expose those differences. Some important scenes in No Manches Frida is Zeki's first day teaching, when the students immediately connect with him because of his confidence and humor, while Lucy struggles to earn the same respect despite being a more qualified teacher. Another important scene is when he begins protecting and encouraging his students instead of only, caring about himself. By the end of the film, he chooses to help others and accepts responsibility for his actions, showing that he has matured beyond his earlier days or early machismo. Comparison. When comparing both of these films, in Treinta, Soltera y Fantástica, independence, career success. So, three of the main things in Treintona, Soltera y Fantástica, that I got out from the women's side of the films was independence, career success, and self-worth. Even though both films, criticize the gender roles, they did them in different ways. And this was growing by becoming independent and realizing her marriage doesn't define her worth. And that's where the independence, career success, and self-worth comes in. And then in the men, the three things that I took away from the film was that responsibility, emotional immaturity, and personal growth. He grew by learning that being a man is not about acting tough or always being in control, which is known as machismo. But instead, it is about taking responsibility, honesty, and caring for others. And, comedy helped to communicate these serious ideas without making it feel overly dramatic. But the main idea from both the films that I got was that both films criticized machismo instead of celebrating it. And then to conclude, both films, they challenge traditional roles, as I have mentioned throughout the whole video. Inez defined success for herself, so personally, I think that is very important. Even though it's a comedy, I think that is very important for us, females or even males, to define success for ourselves and not by what society has for us. And then Zaki grows by accepting responsibility, obviously maturing throughout the film, and realizing that, just being overly cocky and machista is not, it's not very mature, I guess you could say. And, it also, healthy relationships require equality and respect. So, both challenge the traditional stereotypes. And Inez's journey shows that women can define success on their own terms. And while Zaki's journey shows that men must, move beyond the machismo to build healthy relationships. And then together the films suggest that respect, communication, and equality are much more valuable than traditional ideas about masculinity and femininity. And then my works cited, obviously, No Manches Frida, Treintona, Smith, Paul Julian with the Mexican genders. And then I had the one article, but I didn't put it up there. But my one article by, Manduju Salazar, where she argued the film's challenges for the traditional femininity by expectations that Inez had. But that's pretty much it.